Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Build Your Copywriting Business podcast. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Hello. So as always, I am joined by my fabulous co-host, Kate Satars. And today we have the pleasure of talking with a CCA student who has an especially interesting story. I think you guys are going to really enjoy the fabulous Kristin Donnelly. Hello, Kristin.
Hello. So happy to be here.
We are so happy to have you. So let's just get right into it. You balance out copywriting, or I should say maybe copywriting balances out in your schedule some of your other passions, which are super duper interesting. So can you tell us about what a day in the life of your career looks like?
Oh, sure. A day in the life of my career has evolved a lot over the years. So a little background, I am a cookbook author, and I got into being a cookbook author by, I was an editor at Food and Wine magazine for many years. So I had this editorial background, and in 2013, I left to freelance, and I worked on cookbooks, but I also worked on articles and recipe development and just, a lot of different freelance writing types of things, but not copywriting. And what happened was a friend of mine hired me to help with content for a coffee brand called Blue Bottle Coffee. And while I was doing that, I came across your ad, actually, Filthy Rich Writer ad. And I was already sort of dabbling in this, but I was like, copywriting, like what's the difference between copywriting and what I'm doing now? And anyway, I went down the rabbit hole, and then I did purchase the course, and I realized I was actually doing some copywriting. I mean, writing copy to sell something, not just content, which is education, as you talk about. And I love it. And I also realized that it can be more lucrative than editorial and content writing. So then I started to, try to pick up more copywriting clients. So a day in the life right now is actually have a client on the West Coast. So I'm working some West Coast hours. So a lot of times in the morning, I'll do my cookbook stuff, or more of like the editorial type stuff. And then I do copywriting in the afternoon. But honestly, I feel like every year or even every quarter is a little bit different. But I do like to always have an anchor type project, whether that's a cookbook or larger client, and then a lot of little things.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah.
So I'm curious with, cooking and writing in that world for content, how are your copywriting clients? Are they in that same industry? Are they in different industries? What kinds of things are you dabbling in with that?
Yeah, it's funny, for the most part, because I have such a strong background in food and beverage, most of my clients have been in that space. But I actually have a contract right now working with Apple. And not on anything, not Apple, a food company, but Apple, the Apple. And that came about more because I had a friend who we worked together a lot, and then she moved over to Apple. So that has taken me a little bit out of the food space. And it's been awesome. I mean, I like having a specialty, but then it's really cool to do something entirely different and get those skills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. Power of using your network.
Oh my gosh. I hate the word networking because it just it has this icky connotation. So I often think of it as relationship building and really trying to build true, genuine, deep relationships. But yeah, I mean, my network has been everything. So.
Mm-hmm. So how do from the outset, it seems like copywriting and cookbook writing would be very different. But I'm curious if you found any similarities between the two that you didn't expect, or ways that being an expert in one has enhanced your expertise in the other.
That's an interesting question. They are very different. I will say a lot of the cookbooks I've been working on recently are with other people. So I have written my own book, It's called Modern Potluck. Just give it a little plug.
Mm-hmm.
But I now work a lot with other authors. And so that is about inhabiting their voice. And with copywriting, you're often inhabiting a brand voice. And it's honestly like, I think my favorite part of copywriting is like getting into this persona and thinking about who are you talking to. So that is definitely where I see some of the parallels. The other is with recipe head notes, you know, the text or copy that comes before a recipe, that's there to essentially sell a recipe. You're talking about like why you should make this, and you want to make somebody feel really excited about that. So there's some similarity there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. It's obviously you're right. You know what you're talking about, but it's, as you're saying that, I was thinking it's kind of similar to a product description on a website as you're flipping through. And yes, you may already own the cookbook. Maybe you already own the cookbook, but as you're flipping through, you're going, oh, okay, well, I see the picture, but let me read this through to see if this is something I'm interested in investing my time in, investing my resources in. Yeah.
That's the mistake I always make. I don't read through, and then I'm like, oh, prep time was an hour and it has to sit in the oven for an hour and 45 minutes. And I'll be eating at 10 p.m.
Yeah. And hopefully, I mean, you know, no, it's hard to be perfect all the time with that, but it's like, hopefully a recipe will set you up for that, or the head note will set you up for that. Like, you know, there is this, you know, marinating time, prepare ahead, but it's worth it. It's usually like what you want, you know, the type of thing you want to say. So.
Mm-hmm.
Agree. Not buried deep into the recipe at the start.
If it's written well, if it's a Kristin Donnelly special, then it will prepare you. Yeah.
And it's funny, like with recipes, it depends on, for a book or online, a lot of times you have more space. Working in magazines, you know, your space was very tight, which that happens with print and copy. So yeah, it's like, what do you cut? And you have to make those decisions. So sometimes those little helpful things get cut, which is not ideal.
No. So we don't have to feel bad that we're not producing things that look like the photos. Okay, this is good. This makes me feel a lot better.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's funny. My food styling, like that is a whole career. And I have so much respect for food stylists, because even if I make something that's absolutely delicious and looks pretty good, it's like, does not look like a styled dish. Yeah.
So how do you balance the work that you do on cookbooks with the work that you do on copywriting? Because the two are pretty different, and there's not going to be a lot of opportunity for overlap, but obviously you're going to have two different, maybe more, projects that are competing for your time. So how do you go about either scheduling that out or balancing it out? Or
it's evolving. It's always evolving, I feel like. But I am like really conscious, I guess, about how I spend my time and manage my time. So like I have a ritual where it's like every month I sit down, I put my goals for the month, and that includes what I already know is happening. But then I might have some other goals, like, hey, like I'll pitch myself to be on podcast this month, you know, or something like that. And then every week I look at what tasks at hand, make a list of that. And then every day it's another to-do list, but then I start scheduling, and I usually make a schedule the night before my day. So I kind of know what it looks like and know how I want to spend my time. And I do try to work in like time blocks. It's never perfect. I mean, there's all kinds of methods. I think there's the Pomodoro method. You might have just written about that, but where you spend the 25 minutes and then take some time off. It's never that perfect, but I might say like, okay, from 10 until 11:30, I'm heads down, turning off all notifications and just working on this for this client. Then I'll take a break, come back, do another time block. With the work I'm doing now, I have a lot of meetings, so that kind of organizes some of my time for me. But yeah, when I don't have meetings, I just try to be really conscious of how I'm using that time. And again, it's just always evolving. It's like, I do try to leave space. If, even when I'm planning my time, like, so it's not so rigid, but I leave space for the unexpected or for like the cool opportunity, like just a little bit of breathing room. So.
Absolutely. Well, and I would think that would be really important for both facets of your career, because they're both creative. So you need that opportunity to, yes, dig in and get down to work, but also to let things flow a little bit, and let things come to you, and let things marinate, so to speak.
And I do try to use I feel like I'm freshest in the morning. So I try to like put something in the morning where it uses a certain kind of brain power. And then maybe in the afternoon, it's like the admin tasks. I play around with it though. Like I was trying to do all admin on Fridays. I don't know. It depends. I totally play around.
That's smart. Yeah, I agree. There's so many tips out there and tactics and tools, batching everything, do all of your this on one day. And that works so well for some people. Does not work well for me if I have to do one day that's just one thing. So I agree. I think it's really a matter of finding what works best for you. And to your point, that may change on a day-to-day basis. You might have an idea of what maybe an ideal day looks like, but if only we lived in an ideal world.
Yeah. With batching, it's funny. I will hear sometimes about people who are like, I wrote 7 emails in a day, or like I filmed, because I do try to be somewhat active on social media. I don't do a ton, but like I filmed, 10 reels in a day, and I'm like, I'm exhausted after one. So, I think I work better when it's like a little of this and a little of that and a little of this. So,
yeah, I agree.
You mentioned, I'm curious, we had touched at the very beginning a little bit about how copywriting just naturally pays more than other writing opportunities. And I know you had told us before we started recording in your email about how copywriting has kind of helped balance out that income. Can you speak a little bit to that and how that's kind of made things a little more consistent, I guess?
Sure. So is cookbooks, I love working on cookbooks or books in general. And while I was, I guess, developing my freelance career, I used to balance that out with doing a lot of work for websites. And then I did get a bit into content, but it did always feel like this sort of like hamster wheel, like, always trying to catch up. And the way books pay is you get like a large chunk, and then you have to make it last for, until a certain deadline. And sometimes that can be over a year. So you might be like, oh, I'll just speak numbers, but like, oh, I'm getting like $20,000 or $30,000 all at once. But then you're like, oh, wait, but I'm not getting another chunk until it might be 18 months. So, you need to, or at least for, I live on the East Coast, expensive cost of living. So I need to make more than that. So I had balanced it out with like just lots of little articles and recipe development, sometimes, recipe development. It does pay. In any case, once I realized that copywriting could be more lucrative, then I was like, oh, well, this actually lets me focus on doing books, which I love. And then balancing that out with copywriting, which is paying me enough so I can actually save a little bit more. So then I'm building this financial cushion. So if I need, if there's like space between clients, or I don't panic. Basically, I feel like I was often in this like panic mode, like, where am I going to get the money? Where am I, so now I feel like I've gotten into a place where, I just have more room, like more breathing room. So, yeah. Well, and I enjoy it.
Yeah. Yes. Right. Like,
it's really nice. Like it was one of those things where I was like, oh, I'll start this to pay the bills. And then I was like, oh, I love this. It's so fun.
That's great. That's great. What do you love about copywriting? Just to dig in there.
Yeah, sure. It is definitely inhabiting, like I was saying before, inhabiting a brand's voice. And for me, I do like, there is this empathy part of it that I really enjoy, like getting into the mind of the customer, trying to solve their problems, or delight them. So I guess that's what I like about it the most. plus again, it's like with getting into the voice, it's fun to just like, I've done these exercises before, and I've done them for myself, but I've also done them for clients where, especially if they're like they're trying to refresh their voice or something. I'll go and I'll look at other different brands. How are they talking about this? How are they talking about this? How are they talking about this? I did this for like a fast casual restaurant brand but we looked at like clothing brands and personal care makeup brands, but I took their voice and I was like, okay, this is how they would say it. But I did it for a dish description. And then we looked at them and pulled different things to try to like say like, what's this voice going to be? So that's definitely like, that's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that's a testament to your ability to think bigger picture as well. Instead of working with a fast casual restaurant chain or restaurant and then looking at just the competitors in the fast casual space, but to expand outside of that and say, okay, where else can we draw inspiration? Who is maybe going to have a similar target audience? Has that same ethos, that same aesthetic? And I think that's really impressive. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know, because I know you mentioned you were at Food and Wine. And so obviously Food and Wine magazine sells ad space, works with advertisers, but how familiar were you with copywriting in that world before you saw the ad, before you got into it?
I would say not at all. I mean,
it's common, right? I feel like that's most of us.
I mean, I knew obviously, like I looked at the ads every month, but they did at the time, and I imagine they still do, there was a separation between editorial and advertising. And so I knew people on the marketing and advertising side. I mean, they're the people who bring in the advertisers, but I certainly didn't know their clients and the people they were working with and the people they were selling to, and then not the creative teams behind it at all. Right. And I am still learning. Your course has been so helpful with just the terminology for advertising is different than magazines. And I've been in situations where I'm like, what are they talking about? And there's a really nice lesson on like just the different terms. And I hear them all the time now. So yeah, I guess not at all, apparently. Like I would see, it was cool to see like every month we would have there would be a wall with what the magazine was going to look like. And then there would be a time where the publisher, people from the advertising side would come down and place the ads, and there was some strategy behind that. I wasn't usually involved with the meetings, but I would kind of be around when they were happening. But yeah, it is interesting that it was like this whole world that didn't exist, and now suddenly it does.
There it is.
I love it. Was there that skepticism that I feel like a lot of people see with it, of like, oh wait, this is a career. Why didn't I know about this? I'm a writer. Like, I feel like I felt that of like, I'm a writer. Why didn't I know that this was a writing career that I could actually survive with?
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I guess it just did feel separate. And what's funny, I did go to culinary school, and there was a woman, a fellow student, and she was a career changer. I was in my 20s and she might have been her 30s or 40s. I'm not sure, but she was total career changer, had a life before. And I remember her telling me like, oh, I run a school for copywriters and art directors. And I was like, okay. Like, I was like, I don't know what that is. I mean, I think I was young. I was like 23. And so I think about her sometimes, but she went to culinary school and now like has a whole life as a cooking teacher. But yeah, it is funny. And there's a skepticism, and it's funny. Sometimes I find that there's like for people outside of writing, like there was a woman who was like, oh, you shouldn't like talk about that you're a copywriter. You should talk about like being an author. Like there's this, I find it to be a strange, maybe it's a projection. I don't know. But I'm like, no, like I want to talk about being a copywriter. This is how I make my living and I enjoy it. And, you know,
yeah,
I'm proud of it. So yeah,
it's interesting. And I think that is, I agree that I think it's a projection or an external I don't know, forcing something upon it
Judgment.
because
It's a
judgment. Yeah.
of like art versus this is
Yeah.
not art. So it can't be
Yeah.
worthwhile or whatever.
Well, and what I find really interesting too is the people who are most like, oh, copywriting, that's not a real, are never the successful people. You know, it's often struggling authors who are looking to put something else down. Well, I'm an author and this is,
Right.
I've never met and never heard of successful authors, successful writers who would denigrate any other writing profession, whatever that writing
Right.
profession
That's
is.
True.
Right. And really, I guess any successful,
I was
a
gonna say, anyone's
successful journalist or a
Yeah.
successful cookbook author or someone who's in the writing field understands that no matter what type of writing you do, it's an interesting challenge. It's creative. It requires skill and talent. And I don't think I've ever, it's always the people who are, which I think is probably true of most trolls on the internet too, right? The people who
Right.
are struggling with themselves and their own worth and value, who feel the need to put down other people or other
Yeah.
entire industries.
Yeah. She was like an aspiring writer. And it just struck me as so odd. Like I was just like, and it struck me as odd that she was like telling me that, like, you shouldn't. I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
You tell people now you have a gig at Apple. Like if you hadn't
Right.
told people, like
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
best of luck to her. Best of luck to her. So what would you say to people who are, because I think often when people think about copywriting, they think, okay, well, I either have to go all in and it has to be everything that I do, or I can't do it, or maybe I'll only take one client a night, or excuse me, not a night, but one client a month or something like that. What advice would you give to people who are kind of intrigued by this idea of maybe balancing a couple of different careers and making them work well together?
I mean, it's totally possible to dabble or like part-time copyright, or like I have a daughter who's 9. So if you just want to do something part-time, so then you're spending more time with your children, or it's all very possible. There is like a mindset aspect, this like embracing of flexibility and almost a little bit of uncertainty. And I think I went through this like wall back when I was at a magazine because, people were losing their jobs. Like, I mean, magazines are constantly folding, and it's a changing industry for sure. And I suddenly was like, oh wait, my full-time job is not certain. My full-time job is really almost as risky, or just as risky maybe, as being a freelancer. So basically, if you acquire these skills of getting work, doing the work, balancing your time, in some ways you're more stable. So anyway, my advice, I mean, I'm definitely like a build the bridge as you go person. So even when I left the magazine, it always took them so long to hire, and I was very close with everybody. So I gave them 6 months notice. I mean, I don't know that that's realistic for everybody, but in my case, I was like, it takes you so long to hire. Now you can spend the time. You won't be short-staffed.
Very sweet of you.
Well, I loved it. I actually
Yeah,
loved that job so much. So it was just time to move on. And my daughter was 1 at the time. I needed more flexibility, but I love that job. I love the people. And so, but what that allowed me to do was like very openly seek out freelance work. I feel like before, if I was seeking out freelance work, it would have had to have been on the sly a little bit. And in other jobs, you maybe can do it openly, but in this case, I was like, all right, I'm leaving. Like, so I built a bridge of, like, I even had freelance work from Food and Wine when I left, as well as, I just started, I guess, like meeting with people, networking, pretty heavily. So if you're in a full-time job situation and you're thinking about freelancing, and I do recommend like try to find one client, and you get that one client, get that under your belt. And then it becomes like a snowball. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah,
or
no,
not.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and I think you're right in that more than ever, people are starting to understand that this idea of I have a full-time job, I am safe, is not actually the case anymore. And in fact, having skills that you can do, skills in your back pocket that you can pick up clients whenever you want to, and dial that up as you need to, or dial down if you get busy with other things, is actually is a lot safer, is when you're in control of your income and your clients and all that kind of thing. You're actually in a safer position when you know how to go and find clients. Then you're actually in a more, that's where the stability comes from, being in control of your own opportunities.
Yeah. And I will say actually, separately, with editorial work, in the past, there were so few jobs, a lot of people who want them. They don't pay necessarily well. So, if you're applying for those jobs, there's like tons of applicants and it's competitive. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. On LinkedIn, when I started adding being a copywriter, working with Blue Bottle, being a contractor with Apple, I started getting more inquiries from employers about copywriting, whether, sometimes it's like full-time jobs and like, you want to come move to Seattle and thank you very much. No, thank you right now. But that was amazing to me. And then just getting the job alerts, like, I have job alerts now for a senior copywriter just to see what's out there. And then you're like, ooh, I could work for that brand. Ooh, I could work for that brand, and feel qualified. And like, if I needed or felt like I wanted to go get a full-time job, I do feel like there is the work there. Whereas with editorial, it felt a little more like, I don't know, if the work is there, or anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's so many opportunities. So many.
Yeah, there really are. And I've gotten like inquiries, I guess, a lot from LinkedIn. And I've actually worked with clients from LinkedIn. It's funny just like mentioning it, and then people are like, oh, maybe I need that,
And you're like, yes, you do.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That's great. So now if anybody is listening to this and they're thinking, oh, she is so smart, I want to have her write copy for me, where can they find you?
Or write a cookbook for me.
Or write a cookbook.
Yeah,
for
write a
me,
cookbook.
or...
Yeah. I know I've been trying to like merge that, not merge it, but it's like basically to help people and brands tell their stories, or, but through cookbooks and copy. That's what I've been playing with. But in any case, my website is KristinDonnelly.com. And I am on Instagram at Kristin C. Donnelly.
Fantastic. Perfect. And Kristin is I-N or E-N?
I-N.
I-N.
Kristin.
Just double check, because I have
show
friends.
Notes,
I have friends with both. So just if people are listening and they don't look at the show notes, but also too, you mentioned that you have a podcast as well about cookbook writing, but we have a lot of podcasts. Well, they're listening to podcasts. They like podcasts. So share away.
Yeah. So some friends and I launched a podcast called Everything Cookbooks, and we're all cookbook authors. And we talk a lot about the behind the scenes of cookbook publishing, and some really amazing seasoned authors. And it's been so much fun for us. So, and I will say this, if you're interested in doing any kind of nonfiction book, there are a lot of parallels. So, if that's something on your mind, I suggest giving it a listen.
Yes. Yeah. I will personally check it out myself. Yeah. Excellent. Well, awesome. Kristin, thank you so much for joining us. This was so interesting. And I know it's going to spark a lot of inspiration and excitement for people. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. And thanks for creating such great resources for copywriters and wannabe copywriters and career changers.
Oh, you are so very welcome. And thank you to all of you for joining us, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Bye, everybody. Like what you heard? Hit subscribe so you never miss a video. And if you're ready to take the first step toward becoming a copywriter yourself, sign up for a free video training right here.